ready to rock?
So are we supposed to look at the camera or each other or my feet?
You just you can look at whatever you want. You can look up at the bushes. You can look at me.
These chairs are kind of comfy. I might just fall asleep.
I mean, they're all right. I'd like to get something a little more like legit, but
makes me feel kind of like
gangsta, a little bit.
I got to be a little more upright here.
Okay. All right, you ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. This is episode 3, right? Episode 3.
Wow, we're on 3. You've already lost count.
Say what?
We're on 3. You've already lost count.
I can't count that high. It's hard for me. I'm sorry. All right. All right. Welcome, Red Bus Podcast family, to episode 3. Today we are airing from my driveway because I came out to get the bus started and the battery was dead. So note to self for next time, I need to try and start the bus, midday instead of waiting until half an hour before I'm supposed to be setting up. So anyways, I've learned my lesson. That won't happen again, but it is a beautiful location. Wouldn't you agree?
You know it. It's not in the sun.
Yeah, it's not in the sun, so we're not going to be sweating this whole time.
Yeah, that's good.
Good. All right, so my guest today is Darin. He's a friend of ours from the neighborhood.
Yep.
And how long have you been in the neighborhood? Like
10, 11 years already, somewhere in there.
So you moved in not long after us. I mean, it was like, 5 years after us, 6 years after us? Yeah. Something like that. 7 years after us.
And yet you seem to know everybody, and I seem to know like a third of the people that you know in the neighborhood.
I don't know everybody. I keep to myself. But you keep to yourself more than I keep to myself.
I would say that's true, yes.
So there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're kind of on an even playing field in that arena. So I wanted to have Darin on because he is a pediatrician, and he works with a lot of he works in a different kind of different area than we live in.
Yeah.
And so you deal with a lot of different economic style of patients.
I have a whole mix of everything.
Everything.
It's pretty awesome.
And so that's why I wanted to have you on. Because
I didn't know that's why you wanted to have me. I thought it was like for fashion advice or something.
Fashion advice for sure, because the Keen shoes is a look that I don't rock very often.
Well, yeah.
So, kudos to you.
There you go. Fashion tip number 1.
Fashion tip number 1. Wear Keens, but wear them without socks. Because if you wear them with socks, they don't look so good. I think.
I put on the Keens because I thought I was going to be in the sun baking.
Okay, I got you.
I knew not to wear shorts because no one wants to see that.
No, well. So are you saying something about me?
No. You're a runner. You're fit. You get sun on your legs.
Okay, all right.
I don't get sun on these legs.
Fair enough. All right. Well, you know how this works. You've watched a couple of the other ones?
I've watched the first 2 episodes, and I have to say, I was very impressed by your guests. Not so much by the host. No, that's impressed
okay.
by the host as well.
That's okay.
The guests were great. I try to learn the truth from everyone I come in contact with, and I thought, what was her name? Amy. Same as my wife, so I remembered that name. She talked about. You remember what her big truth? She actually asked you the question.
Yeah.
What was
it? What's the difference between guilt and shame?
Yeah. And I thought her answer was brilliant. And I think that that's something I try to teach my patients. Don't become the identity of your mistake, right? Try to see yourself as something more, something better than that. And so it's so awesome to have someone that learns through experience, just share that and share that truth. And so I thought that was a very powerful moment with her. Thought she's a great guest. And I just actually watched the episode with Mike, your brother.
Mike, my brother, yeah.
Didn't know about Mike. And I just watched that today after work before I came over here.
Yeah.
Man, that was a powerful episode. Very impressed by him. The truth I got from him, there was a lot, actually. I mean, the first one I thought was, surround yourself with people that elevate you. That's one of his messages early on. And I actually wanted to, when you were going through that interview, I thought, how did he learn that? Why was he able to, make that his truth? And he kind of got to it later on when he talked about his relationship with Christ. And I think that kind of helped open him up to a greater truth. And so I thought those 2 things were just really, really remarkable. And the thing that was great about when he said it, he felt it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so your first two were great. This one,
I believe this one's going to be great too, my friend.
it'll be a little different. I don't have the hard life experiences. I haven't learned from experience.
Well, but you have plenty of experience, and we're going to get to that in the questions because I know you do.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Well, so we'll see. I have faith that you have experience, so we'll go with that.
All right.
Okay.
All right, let's see where it goes.
All right. So I'll start with question one.
All right.
What was your family life like as a child?
Norman Rockwell, I would say. I grew up in a family, mom and dad, and I had a sister and three brothers, and we had an idyllic youth. I spent my summers in Canada with cousins and my grandparents there, and my springs and fall up at Bear Lake with my cousins and grandparents that lived in Utah, and I really had, a pretty remarkable youth.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So where do you fall in your siblings?
I'm the middle, so I have my sister's oldest, Lisa, and then I had my brother Rick, and then I'm in the middle, and then I have Dan, my younger brother, and my youngest brother David.
Okay. And what do you think you learned from being a middle child?
Oh, how to keep the peace, but my siblings would disagree.
So
They
you
would say I was
pretended you were keeping the peace, but you were actually the little troublemaker underneath.
I think I had my moments I was the instigator, but I think for the most part, they would probably have a different opinion, but I think I was more of a peacekeeper.
Okay. Okay. So you had an amazing childhood,
Yeah.
and you did a lot of. So when you would go up to Canada, you'd like go camping or hiking or.
So
like,
we'd spend a few days in Toronto. That's where my mom grew up. And then we'd head up to Northern Ontario. My grandfather built a log cabin up there in Northern Ontario on the lake. And we just spent summers canoeing and fishing and boating and swimming and, just hiking and exploring the wilderness and trying to catch animals and all kinds of fun stuff. Up until I was about 16. And then I started spending my summers in Utah with friends and that.
Okay. How did that childhood shape you and your views on the world, you think?
Well, I mean, that's like a 5-hour long podcast.
Well,
but it grounded me. It
Okay.
grounded me in what to value in life. I value, I think, time. I value quiet time, creative time. I mean, there was a television, but you had to get the rabbit ears just right, and it was still really fuzzy, and the programming back then was just a couple of good programs maybe a week that I was interested in. So we had to get creative. We had to invent our own traps to try to capture a raccoon, or create our own adventures, and be happy with just time with family and nature. And I love that. That's the kind of stuff I try to pursue to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something special about being outside and in nature and feeling just what we're living in,
Yeah.
and kind of getting away from the buildings and the cars and all of that kind of stuff.
The headphones, the microphone.
The microphone, the pressure of being on camera.
If this was like the red, I don't know, Lamborghini,
Yeah.
I'd have had very little interest. But the red bus sells it. It grounds it, right?
Yeah.
You haven't actually talked about the bus, by the way.
I have not
How
yet.
you got it. You haven't showed video. It's pretty cool inside.
I know.
Yeah, so that's
I know.
be a future podcast.
Maybe I will do that as a teaser between this episode and the next episode.
Yeah.
You think I should do that?
I would like to know the story of the red bus.
Okay.
Does it have a story?
I mean, sort of. A little bit of a story, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to share anything right now. No teasers. I'm saving that for later.
And I'm also, by the way, this is a cool logo. I kind of expect as a person on a podcast, I get swag.
That I'm working on. Okay. Trust me, I am working on that. And when it's done, I will revisit all of the previous guests and make sure they get swag.
Okay, because that's why I'm here.
I do have stickers.
Oh, already?
I have stickers that are this logo with the QR code and it actually works to take you to all the different places you can get the episodes,
I could put it on my water bottle.
you could put it on your water bottle
There
and
you
be
go.
a hipster.
They are.
Yep.
They are.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we've heard a little bit about your childhood. I think that's amazing. I just grew up here in Salt Lake, but I spent so much time hiking and just like love being outside,
Yeah.
you know? So I just think that's a lot of fun. And I think a lot of people, well, I mean, I feel bad for people that live in a big city and grow up in a big city and never get to experience like nature in its purest form.
Yeah. No, I think people need to seek it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when you live in a great state like we do, if you don't seek it out, it'll kind of just pass by.
Right.
Yeah. You
Right.
got to get out there.
I agree. All right. Let's just get right into question 2. Can you describe a turning point in your life that significantly changed your perspective?
Wow. There have been a lot of turning points. Learning about my grandparents and their stories certainly has a big influence. My grandparents sacrificed a lot for my mother to be able to have a chance when they came from Finland to Toronto to try to make a life for her. And they had a lot of struggles, and learning from their experience certainly early on had an impression on my life. Interactions with friends in high school, I certainly had friends that were inspirations and that saw people for who they were. You talked with your brother on the last podcast about not judging people, and I think there were some influences in high school that taught me to look beyond my comfort zone with people. That's been a huge influence. And then, getting married, my wife, and having a family together, that's an opportunity, all the time. I wouldn't say every day, but monthly you have an opportunity for growth and a change of perspective and learning to adjust, your expectations in life. And so that's been helpful. And then as a pediatrician, every week I'm learning from my patients and trying to adjust course of my life based on what I learned and gathered from them. So I can't pick one spot, but early on, those early impressions, stick with you. But I think there's even been more profound experiences I've had since. I worked with children in juvenile detention centers in North Carolina, and those have had lasting impressions on me. So yeah, lots of things.
Well, I mean, I know you're a deep thinker. So I feel like you probably open yourself up to opportunities for growth like that more than some people that might be more, like laser focused on something. You know what I mean? I feel like your mind is a little more open to exploring what's out there. And I mean, would you agree with that?
I would say so, and I think that's probably something I learned from my grandmother and my mother. I think we've grown up in a very conservative culture in Utah, and my mother, who came from Toronto, she was always more open, and my grandmother certainly was, and my experiences with my grandmother, my mother, certainly led me to look at things through a more, open perspective, I would say.
Yeah. So I want to revisit one thing from the childhood. So you mentioned that your grandparents came from Finland, right?
Yeah.
To Canada.
Yeah.
Did you ever live in Canada?
No, just summers.
Just summers.
Yeah.
So your parents ended up moving to the U.S.?
So my father grew up in Utah and met my mother at Brigham Young University.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then she moved down here.
Perfect. And did your grandparents stay in Canada?
They stayed in Canada. Yeah. And her two brothers did as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And my cousins, they're all up there.
All up in Canada. What's the phrase?
Yeah, how's it going, eh?
Hey,
Beauty.
that's all I got.
Sadly, I haven't been back to Canada for a long time, and it's way overdue.
Canada is, we made a stop in Canada when we went on our Alaska cruise. And,
That's
and
Victoria, Vancouver.
yeah, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, this is going to be a fun one. I'm excited
Okay.
for this one.
Uh-oh.
With all of your world traveling, what are two of the craziest foods you've tried, and did the taste surprise you?
Yeah, I didn't expect that question. So, Angola, they have a national dish, which is caterpillar larvae, I think, just caterpillars, and it's kind of their national dish. And as we were leaving, I kind of made, the comment, oh, I kind of expected we'd have the national dish. I thought I was safe at that point to bring that up because we were leaving. The Ebola River Valley, by the way, which is another story, but of course they stopped. They found a guy that was selling these larvae in a bowl. They were all live and wiggly. And then they stopped at a restaurant, had them fry them up in the way they prepare them for their national dish. And of course, then I was kind of stuck. So that's probably the most
wild thing.
unusual
And
thing.
what would you say it tasted like? If you can even describe what it tastes
they
like.
put a lot of garlic, I think, in it, so it tasted a lot like garlic. People that have had snails before, it tasted a lot like snails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had snail before. I don't think it's bad. I almost feel like escargot tastes a little bit like mushrooms.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. So it had a little bit of that flavor to it. There's a lot of garlic, and it got kind of black and oily and kind of different.
But does it like?
And there was
does
it
it
had
like,
a beak that they chomped on, I think, palm leaves or something, and that had a little crunch to it.
and does it pop when you bite it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that. All right. So the reason I asked that question is because you go fishing all the time. Do you still do your fishing trips?
I do a fair amount of it, yeah.
Where was your last fishing trip?
Mongolia.
Mongolia. Yeah. What kind of fish did you catch in Mongolia?
Well, we went there. The primary fish there's a taimen. It's a big salmonoid fish.
Okay.
And the fishing is really secondary. We've done these trips with a number of friends for a number of years, and the fishing is the excuse to get somewhere out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so Mongolia was flying to Ulaanbaatar, and then get on another plane going to Muran, and then we get on land cruisers and we drive them for 6 hours, and then we got on horses and went up a river for 3 hours. Camels carrying all of our gears. Quite a trip.
Yeah.
So we really got out, right on the Russian
really
border,
in the middle of nowhere.
in the middle of nowhere, and you don't have cell phones, you don't have technology. Although one day they did have Skylink available to us, that if we need to text our family and let them know we were doing okay, that was available. But it's really getting out in nature, and more it's about just connecting with friends. Without all the distractions of life, you really just spend 10 days with 3 of my friends on a river, in a culture that, was amazing to experience, a culture that who is purposely trying to, avoid some of the materialistic parts of Western society, and they were verbal about that with us. They're trying to resist that. Whether or not the youth can, we'll have to see. But it was a very, very, very awesome, even I would say spiritual trip in that regard, grounding trip. But we try to do stuff like that, get out to some interesting places.
Take you back to your roots.
Probably put way too big of a carbon footprint. It's probably shouldn't be doing as much as we do, to be honest.
That's all right.
But you said, I think in your intro, I watched even your intro.
Yeah.
I said you didn't want to get too political. So.
I don't want to get too political, but I mean, the reality is like you do that trip, what, is it every year? Or is it every couple of years?
Yeah, it probably a little over, about every 2 years, probably.
Every 2 years. I mean,
no, it's
your carbon footprint for that is minuscule when you're talking about a 2-year period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to be aware of it. We have to figure out ways to give back then, to kind of try to reverse that carbon footprint, try to do better in other areas,
Yeah.
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 From my perspective.
I was going to ask a follow-up question. Yeah, so actually I wasn't going to ask a question. I was going to share a little thought. We went on that Alaska cruise, and we asked Kyler what his favorite trip was that we've been on, and it was the Alaska cruise.
Yeah.
Because
Why?
Because no phones.
There you go.
Because we had no service.
Yeah.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
Because we were able to connect as a family, unlike when we're even sitting at the dinner table.
Yeah. I mean, a nightmare vacation for me would be to go somewhere with my whole family and have them
Be on their phones.
be on their phones.
Yeah.
I can do that at home.
Yeah, that's annoying. I agree. Okay. This is a question that I was definitely excited for you. Okay. How has your profession changed or shaped your views on the world?
In a lot of ways, to be honest, probably the biggest has been more political. Seeing families and children miss out on services that I know our country can afford. Have families that have worked hard their whole life, but then during the time that the parents are unemployed, have an illness come across them, and then they're financially responsible to cover that, even though they've been buying into the system their whole life. To have a family buy an insurance that they feel is going to meet their family's needs, and then find out they don't cover a potentially life-saving medicine. I think that's a big way that it's impacted me. I would say, I think I've always tried to put myself in other people's shoes, but when you hear the stories over and over again from people about their hardships, how they learn, how they grow, how they suffer, that's a whole nother level. That's why I felt that your first two guests, Amy and Mike, with their stories, hearing it from them, it has an impact. And that's why I love the idea of your podcast, because I think the more that we talk to each other and we get people's perspective and their life experience, I think the more we're understanding, and the more we grow as a society. So yeah, I learn all the time from my patients, from the youngest ones and from the parents as well. And hope to continue. I think if I am no longer growing in my profession, then I'm probably, ready to retire, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to decide if I want to ask a follow-up question specifically to what you mentioned.
Bring
because
it.
The thing is like you said, I don't want to get political, but I feel like some of what you brought up is not even necessarily political. I think it's more kind of a systemic thing, right? And I feel like some of it deals with, just the bottom line being the money. You know what I mean? I'll mention this, for example. I got a text message this morning from my insurance company. They had sent out an inspector to look at our house because we had just re-upped our insurance on our home, right? I get a text message this morning. It says, "Oh, when the inspector was out there, he heard a dog in your house. Do you have a dog?" And I said, "Yeah, we have a dog." "Well, what is his breed and like how old is he?" And I was like, "Well, he's a Labradoodle and he's 10. She's like, "Oh, great. We should have asked you that when we were redoing your insurance." And then she got back to me later. "Your insurance is now $38.50 more a month because you have a dog."
Interesting. Yeah.
Because of the liability of him going and biting somebody.
Right.
And I was just like, "Are you for real?" Like, really?
Yeah.
So I started thinking about that and some of the issues that we've had in the past with insurance and trying to get them to pay for stuff. And you're like, we pay into this all the time.
Right.
And then when it comes time to have you pay us for something that we've been paying into this whole time, it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And I feel like the medical industry is probably the exact same way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it has. We pre-existing causes went away with the Obama administration, so that was a huge benefit. But no, it's still, it's still a struggle, for people to get services. I've had a patient that had insurance that, believe it or not, denied insulin.
And
it was in their underwriting that would, I had to write every month. I'd write a letter to the company that provided insulin. They would provide it to them for free, but it was a lot of work. A lot of time to get it, to not get it covered, but to get the company to provide it for free.
Right. Yeah, I feel like insurance loves to have those little hurdles to the point where a lot of times people just don't know what to do to get things paid for or get items, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I would agree with you. So from my perspective, this is just from me speaking, I don't think that's necessarily just a political thing. I think that's companies wanting just every penny they can get.
Yeah, to me, it's an ethical thing,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
I think we have the ability to provide the care. We have the money. We have the technology. We have the expertise. We have all of that. But we've created so many layers within our system between receiving that care and paying for the care. And there's so many people on the take in between the patient and the doctor. All with, I don't think people are purposefully trying to, bring in efficiency into the system.
Like creating jobs that don't need to be created.
Or trying to do things that are unethical.
Right.
But the system has become so complicated, it has become unethical. And we pay more money than any other country for worse outcomes. And people just need to get educated about it. The problem is when you have a media that half of the commercials are related to healthcare in some way, they're not really going to talk about it in any serious way because they don't want to offend the people that are funding their programs.
Right.
And if you're a politician and you have lobbyists that are giving you money, to help you stay in office, you're going to you're going to have a different agenda. So I think if the truth were out about how much we're costing and how much of return on investment we're getting on what we're spending, and how much cheaper it would be if we would tweak our system, we'd provide better care at a lower cost. There's no question in my mind. There's no question in my mind. I used to not feel that way. That's something that I've changed my perspective on over the time, and working with patients, seeing their struggles, and reading every chance I get information about how our healthcare system doesn't work for our patients. I could go into it. Most people in the state of Utah don't know what happened with Stewart Healthcare and 5 of our hospitals in Utah, but they, because of our system and a private equity guy who was a doctor, he came in and put the squeeze on 5 of our hospitals, sold the land beneath the buildings, gave himself a big, huge profit, and then pulled out of our system. And so now hospitals that provide care to a big portion of our community now have to pay a big lease on property that they used to own. And you can type in Steward Healthcare, and you'll get all kinds of examples of how they've done it. And the Congress is going to talk to him on September 12th. He goes, the guy that ran Steward, who was a doctor actually, a cardiologist as I recall. I think he was a cardiac surgeon. He's going before Congress on September 12th. But I think what they'll find is that probably he did everything legal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He owns a $40 million yacht, a $36 million fishing boat. He bought a big ranch next to President Bush and Mark Cuban. He has definitely profited an obscene amount of money.
Yeah.
In the meantime, he's strapped these hospitals with a lot of debt.
Right.
Right. And he probably did it legally. But my point is that kind of thing should not happen when it comes to healthcare. That
Right.
kind of thing should not happen when it comes to education. I think those are basic services. I think those are rights to people to be able to get those basic services. And if we could have a more intelligent conversation about those things, I think most people would agree. Because at first I didn't believe that way. But
Yeah.
once I got the data and the information and people's life experiences, then we change.
Yeah.
Right?
As long as you allow yourself to.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think when we first met and we had some of these discussions, we come at things from a little different viewpoint.
Definitely.
Right? But we come trying to learn the truth from one another.
Right.
And then what ends up happening?
Well, a lot of times either one of us shifts our view or we come to a conclusion in the middle. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like, for me, I love talking to people that I might disagree with on stuff.
Yeah. And I'd say
As long as you can have a reasonable, not heated discussion
Yeah.
about it, where you're both there to learn what the other person is wanting, how they feel,
Yeah.
right? I do that a lot when I go to Chicago with our family because they have a lot different views than I do, and we'll stay up all night talking.
Yeah.
You know, and I've shifted my views on things, and they've shifted their views on things. And honestly, I think in the world we live in, we need more of that, because it's just ridiculous how you get in these camps and it's just, we're right, you're wrong. And that's
Yeah.
just on all levels.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even just politics. It's just everything in life seems to be very polarized at this point in time. And that was kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, because I want to bring people on like you and I have some differing opinions on quite a few things, but we can sit down, we can have a conversation, and you share some stories from your life, right? And it shows people that just because you have differing opinions doesn't mean that like you don't have a view on the world too. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think a lot of times we just get in this mindset of, well, we view the world from this lens that's our life,
Right.
and that everybody should see it the way we see it.
Yeah. And we want to convince people that we're right.
Right.
And you know, a little bit of my talk about healthcare, I do feel I'm right, but I am open to the chance that I could be wrong. And you know, have an opportunity to have a discussion with someone that has a lot of data and can make an argument on why my feelings about the direction healthcare needs to go might be wrong. I'm sure I could learn from that and would potentially even change some of my opinions.
Yeah.
And I think so. You know, when we've had our discussions, and unfortunately, it's been a while.
It has been a while. We need to get back
it's been,
at it again.
It's been pre-COVID, really.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
Yeah. And I've missed that. But we've always left as good of friends, or even better, I would say,
Oh, yeah.
walking away from those discussions than at the beginning,
I would agree.
right?
Yeah, and I usually walk away, especially if we get into a topic where I know some, and you know more, right? I am very willing to listen because I don't know as much as you do, especially like if we're going to talk about healthcare.
Healthcare, right.
Like we talk about
obviously
healthcare, there's no way on this planet
Right.
that I know what you know and
Right.
what you see. So when you tell me that there could be changes that would fix things,
Yeah.
I'm all ears. You know what I mean? So, and I think it kind of goes both ways. We've had some disagreements in the past over things.
Yeah, and I think on some things we haven't changed.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
We now understand where each other's coming from, and yeah.
Yeah. I think that's honestly the ultimate goal of this podcast, is to just get people to be more willing to talk and listen and to see other viewpoints from people.
I would like, and by the way, this is not going any direction I thought this podcast was going to go.
Oh, really? What? No, go ahead, share your thing, and then we're going to get into that.
Now, what was I going to say? Oh, gosh, what was I?
You said I would like.
Oh, I would like. This is the thing that troubles me the most. Whether it's, people have their truth, which I don't like that term, my truth. I think there's truth, right? Now, on the path to truth, we have to experience your own personal truth. But, and I'm not saying universally, but on many things, there is a truth.
Yeah.
How do we get people to let go of their preconceived notion of truth when in face of mountains of evidence to support the contrary? Because that's a challenge, right? People tend to dig in. I think podcasts like there where we get to learn about people's experiences like this, I think is perhaps one venue that we can maybe open people up to changing their minds and their experience of truth.
Yeah.
But that is a challenge, right? People seem to get dug in, don't you think?
I would agree. I mean, I can think of multiple things off the top of my head that I don't want to bring up because that would go down the road that I don't want to go. But I can think of multiple
I
things
looked at my watch. So how much time do we have?
you are talking about that would play into exactly what you're saying.
I mean, I don't think we need to talk about it. I probably need to stay near your mic, but I don't think we need to talk about it. But I think people need to open their minds. I need to do better at it. Do I have the truth?
Yeah.
Have I been, not intentionally misled, but are there things that I need to reconsider about my position? I try to do it, but I probably don't do a good enough job of it.
I think that's difficult. I think it's hard to do that. I just feel like it's almost like it's human nature to feel like when you think you know what's right, to just defend what you think you know is right.
It's a comfort zone.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
You don't want that to be popped. You know what I mean? And then you have to lose and quote unquote lose and the other people's opinion wins and your opinion loses.
I think that's part of it though. We think it's a lose and a win.
Yeah.
And I think the truth is always a win. And I think the problem is we're so convinced that a truth has to be all encompassing.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's political, this group has the truth, this group doesn't have the truth. With healthcare, it has to be all one way. We don't realize that there has to be a lot of compromise and growth towards that truth.
Right.
But it has to happen with small changes.
Yeah.
I would never expect anyone. My change on my views on healthcare took a number of years of adjusting and changing. Moving. I mean, I don't want to get too political, but moving from a position where I felt that competition through insurances and all that was the best way to go to maybe a state-ran, plan, maybe some Obamacare, which provided insurance for more people through an insurance exchange, to observing what's happened in other countries and trying to learn from what are they doing better, where they're paying a lot less per capita,
right, and
they're getting better health outcomes than we are, in pretty much every single measure. If you look at wait time, the easiest thing to measure is how long they're living.
Yeah.
But health outcomes, they're having better health outcomes at a much cheaper price. What can we learn from them? You got your American flag cap on, and I believe America is really the greatest country on earth. But that does not mean that we cannot learn from the other countries. And what are they doing right?
I agree.
I think we have sometimes a sense of American exceptionalism, and maybe personal exceptionalism or party exceptionalism or religious exceptionalism. And by doing that, we're shutting out the truth to so many other perspectives.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back to this other question in 1 second, but along that line, you kind of got me into the political mindset. So now I'm trying.
I'm
I'm
so
trying
sorry. I
not
know
to.
you-
I'm not.
I shouldn't have gone there.
I'm trying not to. But I'm going to share one thing.
But it's not just political, right?
I agree, and I don't think this is just a political thing.
Yeah.
I think this is just. Oh, how would I even put it? Well, I'll just share it. A lot of medical, how would I put it? When I have medical questions about certain things, I don't always just go to like the CDC.
Right.
I actually a lot of times prefer to see what they do in Europe.
That's interesting.
Now, don't ask me why. Well, I'll tell you why, because I feel like there's a lot of things in Europe in terms of food that are banned that we eat here.
Yeah. No, what? Well, yeah.
Right? So just from that small action and difference between Europe and here, I feel like they in some way, and maybe I'm wrong, in some way value nutrition and health at a higher level than we do here, because they ban things that are not good for us.
Yeah.
But here it doesn't matter.
So, you know,
now I'm not a healthcare guy, but that's just kind of where I've kind of gone a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that you could open this up to a big topic.
Right.
What is the American diet? Right?
Yeah,
it's what's marketed to us.
Yeah.
It is a horrible diet, and it's affecting our health. And there's no question about that. But we don't have the political will to do what they've done in some countries like Europe, which is to put certain restrictions on certain highly profitable foods. I tell my patients this. We have scientists that spend a lot of time trying to figure out what is the right amount of salt, what is the right amount of sweet, what is the right amount of crunch to keep them going back,
keep you addicted,
and eating another one, right? Release that dopamine, that reward neurotransmitter
100%.
in your brain, right? And we've left that unregulated for the most part. And then what have we done with our media? Similar scientists, what is the right, way to end this to make them connect to the next one? How can we keep them connected to their media? Our phones, our Netflix, our podcasts, our social media, all that stuff. Which I'm not saying any of it's bad. I tell my patients I don't think media is bad, but if you're not educating yourself at a constant rate about what is the proper use of media, what is the proper use of food, of nutrition, then who ends up winning is the market.
Right.
And we kind of have this thought that the market will always correct itself. It will towards profit, but it won't towards our health.
Right.
And until we start recognizing that and start looking for leaders that have the will to make those changes, those tough choices, to regulate a little bit our media consumption, to regulate our consumption of really unhealthy foods.
Right.
I tell patients when they move here from other countries, I say, don't start eating like an American.
Yeah.
Keep eating like you were eating in your country, because they just ate whole foods.
Yep.
Not processed foods, not foods with tons of preservatives. They ate rice, sometimes rice, beans, chicken, lots of fruits, lots of fresh vegetables that looked like a fruit, that looked like a vegetable.
Right.
Drank a lot of water, and so, yeah, I mean that. I'm with you on that. And
Yeah.
I could talk about that for hours.
I'm sure you could, actually.
Because I see how it's affecting not only myself, my family, but my patients on a daily basis. The way the market. I mean, how we don't give the kids a chance.
Yeah.
They turn on TV and they're kids programs are marketing garbagey foods.
Right.
They drive down the street, billboards with garbagey foods. Restaurants, you go in, they have all these foods that taste good. I love them, right? I tell my patients, if I had my way, I'd eat mac and cheese, pizza, burgers, fries. I love that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I have to educate my brain to reject it.
Yeah.
And it's a constant battle,
right?
Because they don't release the same amount of dopamine, the reward neurotransmitters.
Right.
And the carrot farmers aren't marketing the way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you've seen me over the years on my health journey. I've lost quite a bit of weight, and a lot of that dealt with diet. I mean, obviously, I've gotten into working out and running a lot,
Yeah.
but the diet change has been huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't eat as much junk food. I got rid of mostly all of my soda.
I remember when you told me that. I've done that. That took a while.
Yeah, it does take a while. I won't say that I don't eat stuff that I shouldn't eat. Like last night, I had a McDonald's cheeseburger, which I know is like eating the worst possible nutrition value, but it still tasted so good.
And I'm not, and you know, I don't think anyone suggests we shouldn't eat any of that stuff, right?
Right.
But you know, I've noticed every time the Bees win a baseball game, you can get a free double cheeseburger at McDonald's. For I think you have to spend like a couple bucks or something. But I mean, it's even more affordable to eat poor.
Yeah.
Right? To eat poor quality food's even more affordable.
Yeah. When they start giving away stuff.
Yeah, you just probably just ruined your chance of having McDonald's sponsor your
That's all right. I don't care. I'm not looking for sponsors like that anyways. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question before we get into the final two questions.
All right.
What were your expectations of the podcast when you came on?
Well, you did mention to me that you might ask about.
And yeah.
Yeah.
I asked that with Mike last
When I
week.
saw you asked Mike that question, I thought, okay, maybe I'll be free from that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was like, you seemed a little hesitant.
Yeah.
Because that was one question. So
I probably ought to tell them what.
So yeah, I don't give questions out to guests. Like this is all on the fly. Everything's on the fly. But the question that I asked Mike last week about death and how if there has been death that has affected him in his life and how, I figured that was a question that I probably should primer people with before I ask it, because some people I don't think would want to talk about it.
Yeah. And what was my initial answer?
Your initial answer was that you weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
And so.
And then you said, well, let's put it off No, I said maybe in a couple months, right?
Yeah.
And you said, no, we'll just do it anyway now, and we won't ask that question. And I said, no, I don't want to, you know, we'll keep it quick, but, you know, I lost my brother to suicide, as you know. And you don't recover, you don't recover from something like that. And it had a big impact on me. And I guess part of my concern was when someone you're close to commits suicide, it impacts everybody around them. And I didn't want to represent my perspective that would be in some way not respectful of the other people that were hurt by his.
That makes sense.
You know, his death.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important topic to be talking about. I think, you know, I work with suicidal patients on a very regular basis, much more than I thought I would. And I can tell you from years of experience there's always hope. There's always treatment. It's part of what we're talking about, healthy diet, exercise, you know, is a piece of that. Sometimes it's connecting to your faith community. Sometimes it's connecting to friends. Sometimes it's connecting to professionals, medical doctors, therapists. It's never one answer for everybody. It's usually a combination of things, just like it's usually a combination of things that puts somebody into a position where they're feeling that degree of despair in their lives. And so, you know, people that are contemplating it, you know, there's you know, I wanted to be prepared if we were going to have a discussion about, you know, what people do if they're feeling that way. And I think part of it is the things we've talked about, but always reaching out to others, people that care about you, reaching out to them. There are hotlines, 988. There's Safe Utah app that kids can reach out to. And I've had patients have good experience with those, with the 988 number and with the app. And I've had patients that haven't had the greatest experience. So then they just go to the, you know, they keep find, you know.
So they've got a layered system.
Yeah, you got to keep looking until you find what works for you. And if I have a patient, I just tell them up front, if what I'm doing is not working for you, you need to find a different doctor, or we need to talk to me about it. I will refer you to somebody else until we get that dialed in.
Yeah.
And so there's always hope, but it takes reaching out. And the one thing with my brother that, you know, I've learned from, you know, I have a lot of regret. I was very close to everyone in my family. My brother, you know, no different. First 20 years of my life, very much involved with all my family. Next 20 years of my life, I'm going to get my education, medical school, residency. Come back, I'm starting my career. So we a little less connected, right? But I'll never forget my last conversation with my brother. He was kind of like you. He was this go-getter, exerciser, nutrition guy, but he was a nature guy. I think most of my family, all my family is. He was involved in Weber Pathways with helping them develop trails up in the Ogden area. Very involved in his community. He owned a dog kennel and training facility and grooming facility. Loved animals. He just seemed like the last person that I would have ever imagined would be having a struggle where he would even contemplate suicide. Mm-hmm. But I remember he had an injury to his back. He was in Lake Powell, and I think he dove and injured his back, and he was unable to run. And we were at Thanksgiving, and I just told him, I said, you know, I know a lot of people use exercise as a kind of a form of therapy. It does release that same neurotransmitter you can get from, you know, a bag of Doritos. Mm-hmm. I said, has it been hard? And he said, yeah, it's been hard. And I remember when he said it, I kind of felt, whoa, he kind of meant that. But I hadn't really expected, and I didn't follow up on that. And the next time I had heard anything regarding him, he had taken his life. I should have followed up. I should have taken that message and said, you know, oh, you know, tell me about that. You know, are you feeling okay? You know, have you had any thoughts, negative thoughts, like, you know, life is no longer worth it? You know, I don't, you know, I didn't, that wasn't even in my realm of thinking that was possible for him, but I should have followed up. Right. And so if people have anyone they know that is in struggles, follow up, reach out to them. Because, you know, I have regret for that. I could have made a difference, you know. I do feel, you know, you talked about guilt and shame. Yeah. Right. I do feel guilty for that. I don't know that I feel shame anymore. It wasn't intentional. Right. But I feel guilt, and I've had to grow through that. It was like a missed opportunity. Yeah. And we're going to have those, and we can't, you know, we can't carry that burden. And I don't think I do, but I honor my brother by growing through that experience. Right. And not trying to let those opportunities pass in the future. And there's still opportunities that I have allowed to pass, I'm sure. Yeah. And in retrospect, it's always 2020, right? Oh, of course. It's always clear when we look backwards. Unfortunately, I have a spiritual compass to know that there is more, and that these are opportunities for not only for me to grow, but I believe my brother will grow from that experience as well. And I know there's more opportunity for him to grow. And I think that's what helps carry me. Yeah. And I worry about the people who, you know, don't have that, you know, kind of beacon. Right. That North Star. Yeah. And I don't, whether it's religious or whether it's Mother Nature, you know, whether it's, there's so many faith traditions that can help support people. I have family members that don't believe in God, but, you know, they still have a beacon to carry them through the difficult times. And I think everyone needs to develop those kind of things. So that's what I learned from the experience from my brother. Yeah. Is, you know, take advantage of every opportunity you have to reach out to others. I think that's a good point. I think it's a hard one, because a lot of times when
we're around people that are struggling, and you have a conversation like that, and you don't know that they're struggling.
Yeah.
You have a conversation like that, it's hard to think of that as a possibility. Maybe sometimes. I'm just thinking of another friend that took his life, and my last conversation with him, and it was very similar to what you had
described.
with your brother.
Yeah.
And I think at that, and I'm like, I think the same thing. Like, I could have done something to help.
Yeah.
But again, it's a difficult, because we all are in our own lives,
Right.
and to pick up on those little cues.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's not necessarily like they're asking for help. It's almost like they're dropping a breadcrumb to see if you'll follow it, to ask them more.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Or not.
Or not.
We don't know.
Right.
That's the trick.
But it's kind of our job to try to pick up on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the difficult part about it, because
Very well said.
we get
I
we
agree.
get so into our own lives that you don't really.
I think that's very well said. And I want to take back something I actually said. I said I feel guilt. I don't know that that's the right word. I think I just feel regret.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that. We don't always know what's happening to other people, but we do know through research that asking someone who we're worried about if they are having thoughts of hurting themselves or ending their life, committing suicide, does not increase the likelihood that they're going to do it. So I think that the take-home message is, from a viewpoint of someone who might know someone that they have concerns about, it's never, it's always okay to ask.
It's always okay to ask. That's what I was going to ask next, was any insights on, what to ask if you feel like somebody might be going down that path. So that's what you would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, that's my understanding. I mean, I'm not an expert,
Right.
but my understanding is that I know this is well researched, that we can ask people if they're having thoughts about hurting themselves or ending their life, and that will not increase the likelihood that they will do it. It'll actually lower the likelihood, because it gives them an opportunity to open up, right? And I would like to say, not every death by suicide is preventable.
Yeah.
I think the survivors of people who have had loved ones that have, passed from suicide, we need to understand that it's a disease, like cancer or a heart attack can be a disease. And so, we can't carry that burden on us. We can just learn and grow from it. And this is where it gets tricky, because I say that, and that's from the survivor standpoint. But I would say to the person that's having the contemplation, there's always hope.
Yeah.
And always reach out. And if you don't get help with the first person you reach out to somebody else. If the first therapist isn't the right fit for you, get a different therapist. If the doctor you're seeing isn't the right fit for you, ask them for a referral to a different provider, and they'll be happy to provide it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think, I'm glad you brought up the topic, because I've never been to that point where I ever thought about actually hurting myself, but I have been in a depressive state, pretty deep depression before. And having had that experience, like, I feel for people that get into those places,
right.
because it just feels very hopeless and like you're all alone.
Yeah.
And so I hope that if I ever run into people like that, that I can help bring some kind of light, or throw a rope into the pit of despair for them to, have some kind of hope, because it's not a good place to be. And like you keep saying, there's always hope. And so again, I think if we can get people to view other people with more compassion, I think there will be more of that hope.
Yeah.
Well, that was That was heavy, a little heavy,
Well,
but
yeah,
but very good discussion,
yeah,
but heavy.
yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad that you shared, because I knew that was impactful. Because, as my brother in the last episode said, my older brother took his life, and if I remember correctly, that was like 2 months or something before your brother took his life.
I know it's fairly recent.
It was very close.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you got that call, I remember we had to sit down and we talked through it, because we both have experienced that.
Well, I think to your credit, you were one of the first persons that reached out to me, so I appreciated that. Yeah.
Well, I know, I mean, I felt it. I felt what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I kind of had an idea of what you were going through. Granted, I think my experience was a little different, because I could tell my brother was on that path. The last phone call I had with him, I knew he was on that path.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was anything that I could have done. Mike in the interview last week or 2 weeks ago said he would have loved to have tried to help him. I mean, I would have loved to also, but I just think from talking to him, he had made his mind. And I tried to talk to him, but that was much different than your experience, where it's kind of out of the blue. You don't see it coming.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say there's as many paths to death by suicide as there are suicides.
Yeah.
And there are many paths to healing. Everyone's pathway of healing after, you've lost a loved one to suicide, or, you've had thoughts yourself. Everyone's pathway is a little different. It's something I'm still processing. I'll be on this path of trying to understand and grow and learn and help others, I imagine for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Nothing leads to growth like adversity.
Right.
And
Life is a journey.
yeah.
And we're all learning as we run into hurdles or fall off of cliffs or whatever it may be. And ultimately, some people's lives may look like they're peachy and that they never have any problems, but everybody has some sort of issue at some level.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Yeah. Well said.
Okay, well, I've got 2 questions left.
These were the ones that I'm worried about.
And
these come from your brother?
These came from my brother. But I will tell you this. Real quick before we get into them.
Okay.
The first question he gave me was difficult for me to understand. So I had to have him detail it.
Do I get to pick which of the 2 I get to answer?
Well, no, you're going to answer both of these, because I reached back out to him later and I said, why don't you give me another one? Because I don't think that first one is quite on the level of where I want to go. So I got two questions. Okay. They're both easy.
Okay.
Well, easier.
All right, we'll see.
First one. Now remember, these questions are from Mike from episode 2.
All right, Mike.
Okay. If you could own any car from the 90s, what would it be?
Man, I can't remember the 90s anymore. Let's see, 90s. That was...
I'll tell you, the reason he brought it up is because he
I know what
loves the Dodge Viper.
The Dodge Viper, huh?
So
I actually owned the car that
you would want.
That I would want today. For any car from the... Well, did it have to be built in the 90s, or in the night when I was in the 90s, what car did I want?
Well, I'll just let you translate that yourself.
I to be honest, I'm not really a huge car guy. And
I have an idea what your car is going to be.
Yeah, I bet you can say it right now.
The Jeepster.
The Jeepster.
The Jeepster.
Right. The Jeepster was the first car I bought with my own money that I was really excited about. It was a Jeepster Commando, and my wife had me sell it when we had our first baby because she didn't feel it was safe for the baby. And, seeing, the red bus here.
This is totally safe. It has 0 airbags. has no crumple zone.
Right.
It's the most safe car on the road.
But you open the hood. I don't know about this one actually, because vans are a different thing. But I could open the hood of my Jeepster and I understood everything about it.
Okay.
And the cool thing is when we were in Mongolia, is they have Land Cruisers there that are new.
Yeah.
But they remind me of the Jeepster. You open the hood and it's an engine.
It's simplistic.
Yeah, and because they don't have all the regulatory stuff they have to have here to make it safe,
right.
to be honest, in Mongolia.
Yeah.
And so they're rugged. They'll run forever. You can fix them yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the Jeepster.
It'd be the Jeepster.
Is there a specific year of the Jeepster that you like most?
It has to be probably between the Jeepster Commando that was like 68. I mean, I'm not great on cars and dates, but it seems like the 68 to like 71 models were the ones that I liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mike.
Had to be a Commando.
I'm
has
sorry.
to have a flat grill.
I'm sorry you didn't get an actual 90s car, but he liked it in the 90s. So
I don't even know what cars they were making in the 90s, I'll be honest.
I mean, there's some okay ones.
Yeah, I have no idea.
The 70s were garbage.
Mike's
most
younger
cars.
than me, so he
grew up in the 90s.
That's when he was in the
Yes,
cars. If
yes.
you'd asked me, I could probably name some cars of the 80s when I was getting my driver's license.
Okay.
But not the 90s.
Well, I'll take it, the Jeepster. All right. Now, and so the second question he gave me as a follow-up to the first one, because the first one was not, I just wasn't going to use it.
Okay.
This is a classic. It's a very classic question.
Okay.
If a tree falls in the woods and nobody's around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a sound.
And why is that?
Well, I mean, I think he answered that question with you asked him a question about the wind, right?
Yeah.
I think that everything has a purpose and meaning. Nature definitely, that tree lived a full life. When it falls, it's going to roar. It's going to let the trees around it know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's letting its environment know. Yeah. And just because
absolutely.
a person doesn't hear it doesn't mean
it doesn't have to be. Yeah. Where that's kind of an egocentric thing, right?
If I don't hear it,
if I don't hear it, didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. We got to experience everyone's truth, right? And so absolutely does. Oh yeah, easy question.
Easy question.
I thought it was going to be tough. Come on, Mike. I could sit down with Mike and I could probably talk to him for like a full day without stop or eating or.
I think you could.
Yeah.
He's a pretty cool cat. So, I don't know. I might. I know we're over an hour. It's fine. If people want to not listen,
you can edit out a chunk of it and get it down to 40 minutes.
But the thing is I'm not going for like a specific time.
Oh, aren't you? What was it?
I think Amy's was like 35 minutes.
Okay.
And Mike's was like 47 minutes. So we're going to make yours like an hour and 15 minutes. That's perfect. Then the next one will be like an hour and 45 minutes. Next thing you know, I'll have Rogan style where it's like 4-hour interview.
See, I've never listened to a Rogan. He's like the podcaster, right?
Oh my!
I've never listened to
I love his stuff. He talks to a lot of people, and a lot of people that I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that I'm interested in hearing their stories and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Elon Musk interview was fascinating. It was great to watch. They ordered pizza, and Rogan's favorite pizzas like double anchovies and pineapple or something. And they sat there and ate it on the podcast. And Rogan was like, it was hilarious. It was pretty funny.
I've listened to one podcast in my life that was like someone interviewing someone. Well, I've listened to now 3 because I listened to your 2. Okay.
Yes.
I listened to, it was Justin Bateman and I think a couple other guys. I say I'm not good with celebrity names, but they have him and 2 other guys have a podcast.
Okay.
And they were interviewing Sean Penn.
Okay.
And I thought, that's got to be interesting. So I found that podcast. I listened to it, and I was kind of like,
It wasn't as interesting as you thought.
I thought it was going to be a lot better than it was. So that was my one shot.
All right.
But I've subscribed to yours.
Yes.
So there
that's
you go.
a good reminder. Thanks, Darin. Subscribe. I need those subscribes.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, just because you said it was easy, I'm going to give you the question that he gave me initially.
Oh, I shouldn't have said anything there.
Well, this is just like those grubs you had to eat.
Okay.
You said something as you thought you were done. and now it's time to pay up.
Okay.
Okay. Don't ask me to explain what this question is because you're just going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Do you believe the earth is flat and we are surrounded by the firmament like it says in the Bible?
Well, the Bible says we're surrounded by firmament. I don't think the Bible says it's flat. I'll tell you it's flat right here. This pot's flat.
Okay.
But no, the earth is not flat.
It's not flat.
The earth is round.
Okay.
But my truth and my perspective right here is flat.
Okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder, I would like to talk to Mike about
There was-
where he's going on that.
See, this is where I asked him, and I didn't write down all of his answer, but it was something about ice, and I don't even know what the answer was, to be honest, because I had never really heard of that question before.
I'd be interested in what his biblical reference was that would suggest to him that it's flat.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, there you go.
There you go. So I guess it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be because
I
Darin just knows things.
Well, I have, the earth is round. I think we have enough evidence
proof
of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends. It's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, in my field right here, it's flat, but
from further away.
Further away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to learn from that as far as perspective goes.
So note to self and to all of you viewers, Darin is not a flat earther.
Not flat earther.
Okay. All right. Well, Darin, thank you so much for being on. I think it's been great. I'm sorry, viewers, that it went long, but I feel like there was a lot of information in this podcast that is beneficial to a lot of people. And hopefully we all can take some of the things from this podcast and take it into our lives so that, one, we can help people prevent suicide, because that is a big deal. I've been influenced by it multiple times in my life, and I don't want that for people if there is any potential way to not have it happen.
Yep. Reach out.
So reach out. So thank you for tuning in to episode 3 with Darin on the Red Bus Podcast. Peace.